What a great joy and privilege it is to meet like this in the heart, in love. Mm, 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 mm. And so it somehow seems like recognizing the privilege that it is to know joy in a world that imagines that joy is lacking, right? It seems such a privilege. And the recognition of that privilege to know the joy of the heart, to know the freedom of the heart, when it seems like on the surface of life, that is not always known. And that is why it is so important that our knowing be recognized as a privilege, not a privilege over, but a privilege that invites us to stay true, a privilege that invites us to recognize how incredible the grace is that brings us to this possibility. And why would we spend a single moment pretending that we don't know this truth, right? This is the kind of privilege that we're speaking of. A privilege that affords us the possibility to be in service by living life in the heart, living life as the joy and the love that we are, and to receive the whole play of life as a grace that is offering us always the possibility to go deeper, to know ourselves more deeply. Because as we open to the incredible joy of being natural and true, the ripples of what we are recognizing spread out, because there's only one whole. So all that we are and every way that we move supports the whole. That there's nothing personal about this unfolding. It is something that is recognized in the great maturing, that this unfolding is not offering anything for the me. And everything that we live through, every being, we're not suggesting that we're in a position of privilege that denotes a specialness. Every being, every move is for the whole. And so it's this recognition that we can make the move for the whole, that supports the whole, coming to the remembrance of freedom, coming to the remembrance of the light, and the possibility of bringing this light, that in a way, this human life, this experience is offering us the possibility to know the light that we are and to bring the light. We can only know the light and bring the light when there's no one left to imagine that there's any kind of superiority in this. So just wanting to be very clear that when we speak of privilege, that we're not speaking of an imbalance of power. We're speaking of the sense of privilege as a humility that the more insignificant we become, the closer we are to God. The more insignificant the me is in its sense of achievement or needing to be seen. In a way, the more that we are seen, but we're seen in the light of the divine, we're seen in the light of the wide open heart. So there's this glory in that. The more insignificant that we become, the more that we kind of just disappear into the oneness, into the one heart, the closer we are to the glory, the more deeply immersed we are in the light that is true, the one divine light. And in a way, our whole human life is like a reorganizing of the patterning that creates a sense of separation, the patterns in consciousness that are discordant, that create a sense of separation. We are reorganizing and recalibrating these patterns and bringing the remembrance of the purity of consciousness, bringing the patterns back to the sacred patterning, the divine patterning, the original purity, the original divinity. That when we bring our sense of our own heart back into alignment, that we disappear out of the sense of separation and we join in the wide open field of the divine heart. And we know the love that we are, the love that is true. And that everything that is conspiring in the human life, however hard it can feel sometimes, and however crazy and tumultuous the surface of life in the collective might seem, that we're being invited to stay open to what we know is true, that we're being invited not to collaborate with the story and the fear, that we're being invited to stay rooted, grounded in the love, in the frequency of love, and to live the truth of the heart right on the surface of life. That the greatest service to the whole is in living this, in being this. And in that, opening to the light, opening to the presence of being and the fine frequencies of love and clear seeing, and bringing that light, having the capacity and the power in our knowing, being so rooted in our knowing that we have the power and capacity to bring the light to the seeming darkest places, that we have the power to bring the light to all of the discordance by shining upon, and that the power of the light can bring clear seeing, that we're not the stories, we're not the narrative, we're not held in any kind of bondage or captivity by fear, unless we're afraid of the fear, right? This is like a catch. If we fear fear, we're caught. But if we see fear as the light of the illumined heart, then we're not caught. We know that whatever we're seeing, even if it brings sensations in the nervous system of fear, if we're not fearful of fear, then we're not held captive by the mind. And so we could say this whole unfolding is about coming to an openness, a rooted openness in the presence of being via the stillness and the silence, coming to the knowing of the being and the remembrance of the openness and the fine frequency of the openness. And then bringing that fine frequency right to the surface of life so that it can dissolve and clear the residues that can keep us bound, that clear the residues of the mind's narrative, conditionings, and protections. And the clearing of this is by illumination. The clearing of this is not by imposing anything upon. It's by the absolute non-imposition of any agenda, any ideas. It's the absolute unconditional allowing of all that our heart is holding and feeling to be freed into the presence of a love, of a light that is without condition and is powerfully rooted in divinity, in the purity, in the divine pattern, so that everything that feels to be discordant in our functioning can be seen in the light, that the light can penetrate the deepest, darkest hiding places and bring the clear seeing that what feels to be like a skeleton in the closet, what feels to be like, a scary monster under the bed, is nothing more than a shadow. And when the light comes and illuminates the shadow, it's seen that there's nothing actually there. It's not real. It's just a play of light, right? So it's not the way that the mind imagines that we have to process and work through and bring healing. We're speaking of a depth of healing that's happening on a much finer, subtle level. It's happening in the subtle body and the fine, subtle layers of body. It's not about healing the mind with the mind, as in bringing new concepts and ideas. It's not about changing the mind and using positive affirmations. It's about, in a way, that positivity being a frequency of the divine, right? Because if we're using the mind to try to overcome the mind, it's just another layer. It's just another narrative. It's just another story. And just another story is not going to bring the depth of healing that frees us from the belief in separation and division from God. The only way to free us from the belief in separation is to find the part of ourselves that has never been separate, that we have to find within our own functioning the part of us that has always been free. And of course, that part, therefore, can never be found or given to us by someone else. That the part of us that we have to find is within us. It's in the deepest realms. And when we find the part of us, the presence of being, when we find that love, that being that has never, ever been touched, we are reconnected with the source, with the love, the innocence. We're reconnected with the original innocence of all. In a way, the innocence of all, we could say, is the purity or the divinity, divine wholeness. And now the residues of our pains and stresses and traumas and all that seems to be holding us bound can only be transmuted in the presence of divine love. So in a way, our quest is to find the divine love in which the presence of everything can be transmuted. Because if we're really longing for true healing, we have to find the presence of love where that healing can happen. And now we can discover guides and companions that can hold a frequency of that love. But ultimately, it's only ever a bridge. We have to find that love within ourselves. We have to find that miracle light in our own heart, really for the remembering of union to happen, the rebalancing to happen in the heart. It's an inside job, right? So, you know, the greatest guides and companions in the world can only bring us to our inner functioning. We can join in companionship as we journey into our inner realms and share and support. And it's incredibly profound and beautiful and even necessary to have this depth of companionship as we journey. But the actual journey into the inner realms is completely solo. It's completely solo. And on a certain level, we are prepared through the life to make this solo journey into the wilderness of our own consciousness, where true healing can happen. So in a way, we have to find the divine love so that we have the power of a frequency that is so rooted in an unwavering, undisturbable knowing of true nature, of love, the fine resonant frequency. And then we look upon anything in the life that feels to be discordant. And we allow the light to shine upon the seeming discordance without the interception of any kind of mental, conceptual ideas and beliefs that say, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do it this way, you need to do more of that. Don't show anyone that part of you. Stop that. Behave like this, right? We don't want any interceptors that are bringing conceptual ideas so that the heart that got shut down in the young life, or let us say more truly, the heart that got obscured and imagined to be shut down in the young life, is revealed to actually be holding the key. This is the glory, is that even if we use the surface of life language, the most broken parts of us are holding the key. The most broken, discordant parts of us in the deepest, darkest places within us that we feel are so unacceptable is the light of God, right? You could not even imagine how profound it is that the light of God, the glory, is shining right in the deepest, darkest hiding places. And that is why they have to get surface. That's why they have to bubble up. It's why we have to go through the kind of quagmire and jungle of the emotional landscape in order to get to the light. And you know, how we find this light is we say to the most broken parts of ourselves, what are you longing for? And these most broken parts of us will say, I'm longing for love. I'm longing for the light. I'm longing for connection. And then we say, well, how do you know? How do you know that's even possible? In the absolute darkness of what feels like trauma or violation or abuse or depression or stress or anxiety, how do you know in what seems to be so dark and unfixable? How do you know about love? How do you know this possibility? And then we open to the revelation. Oh, right in the heart of what seems to be dark is the absolute knowing of innocence, is the knowing of the light. It's never been actually extinguished. It's been obscured in our experience, but it's always been shining at the center, right at the core. So this is why we can never find true healing in the external. is because we can think, oh, well, that's shiny, that might fix me. That's shiny, that might fix me. Well, that's bright, that might fix me. That feels like love, that might fix me. That feels good, that might fix me. This is joyful, maybe I'll be fixed right now. But as long as we're imagining that we have to fix ourselves using what is available on the surface of life, we will be missing the incredible grace that the only healer that we truly need is the divine spark in our own heart. That our own heart holds the spark of healing. The missing piece of the puzzle is in our own heart. It is the light of our knowing that might seem to be obscured by darkness and stress and heaviness and density and discordant patterns. But the truth is that the obscuration is a mist, it's a fog of Maya. It's like if we have our functioning in the mist, we believe, oh, I'm stuck here, I'm stuck here. But really, in a way, all we actually need to do is bob our head above the clouds, right? Be the light that is bright enough to burn away that mist and see clearly, oh, that's like a layer of story. It's like a layer of fog. The seeming darkness, the seeming stress, even the seeming trauma. It's like the whole narrative around it is like a band of fog, right? And it's like, you know, you can be at the bottom of a mountain and it can be kind of mixed weather patterns. And as you go up the mountain, you go into the fog more. It's like you thought, oh, it's a lovely day to go up the mountain. And you start going up the mountain and suddenly you're in fog. And you're like, oh, maybe it wasn't such a good day to go up the mountain because now it's kind of foggy and there's weather patterns. But you stick with the weather patterns and at some point you come out of the fog, you come above it, right? This is in a way what this unfolding is like. Oh, wouldn't it be nice to open to the possibility of spiritual awakening? Wouldn't it be lovely to learn meditation? Oh, wouldn't it be lovely to go to a retreat? Wouldn't it be lovely to go to kirtan? Wouldn't it be lovely, right? We open to all of these possibilities and the heart starts to open. And as we start the journey, we think, oh, this is gorgeous. My heart feels full and open. And then we get to that band where we're in the weather patterns and we're like, oh my God, why did I choose this? Can't even see your way clearly to get back out of it again because you're so densely immersed in it. And ultimately, the heart's longing is just like this power force. But you come above the fog and you realize, wow, the infinite blue, the sunshine, right? Who would have known just before when you're in the fog that a second later you could take a turn around a corner and you've just reached an altitude where it's just bright, bright light and infinite, unbounded freedom, right? And you can see it all from here. You can see it all. You can see that band of fog, the weather pattern. You can see it all. It's so clear. It's the big picture. And this is really when we're in the presence of being and the light is bright, we can see the way that it is. But when we're in the fog, we feel like there's no way out. We feel like, oh, I've forgotten the being. I've forgotten love. The glory is that we come to know, oh, but the divine love is always shining. The sun is always shining. We come to know that the love is always here. The divine love is always here. And it's about a depth of faith. And faith is very glorious because faith isn't trusting or depending on anything external. Faith is our connection to our inner knowing. We could say that faith is present when we can't see the light, but we know the light is there. It's like we can't see it, but the heart somehow knows. It's like we're connected through this faith to a sense of, I know there's something more. I know there's something bigger. I know that there's a greater possibility than somehow what I'm living that feels hard, right? This is the faith. And faith is a particular frequency. And the frequency of faith is a fine frequency. It's a frequency akin to surrender, because it's trusting in something that you can't see. And to trust in something that you can't see takes a certain surrender. But so much of this unfolding we can't see. We can't see the path. We don't have a map. We don't understand it with the mind. And so it's relying upon this faith, the frequency of faith, which is connected to the heart's longing. It's connected to the longing of the heart. That when the heart's longing is alive, when we can feel in the heart that we're longing for freedom, for love, for the glory, for awakening, we're longing for truth, when we can just feel that longing and we stay in the frequency of that longing, what we maybe don't realize to start with is that the frequency of that longing we imagine is our longing, my longing, but the frequency of that longing is the divine longing for you. It's the magnetic pull of the divine calling you to remember. The incredible beauty is that we're fully equipped with everything that we need to remember and to open fully to our own openness. It's just that the misguidance and misunderstanding has meant that we have been looking in the external and placing our bets upon the temporary, that we've been putting our bets upon the transient, upon the moving, changing, and then feeling disappointed when it changes, when it lets us down. And it's because we cannot put our bets upon anything that is moving and changing. We can only place our absolute faith in what we can already hear in this moment here now, experience as unmoving. So in a way, the breadcrumbs of the quest are to follow the longing of the heart, which is like this magnetic pull, that even if it seems like it comes and goes, it's really always there. Once it opens, it's always there. And then we follow the breadcrumbs to discover what in this moment is aware, what in this moment is not changing. And we open to recognize that whatever in this moment is not changing is the way. We recognize that the stillness of the moment, the silence of this moment, is the unchanging awareness that is aware of all of the moving, changing elements in this moment, and yet itself is not changing. Now, the mind wants results right now. Well, I want to heal this now. I want to get there right now. But the whole dance of surrender and being humbled out of our protections and conditionings, and in that, you know, in separation, we have these we have ways of wanting selfish gain, and we have to be humbled out of all of the ways of selfish gain. So it takes as long as it takes for the humbling to happen. It takes as long as it takes. The stillness, the silence of this moment is always, always the sanctuary. Always the sanctuary. It's always here. The presence, your presence, is the presence. The I am presence, existence itself, the sense of your existence in its simplicity, is the existence. It's life itself. It's the being, the presence of being that just is. And so being here to recognize the silence, the stillness, is to recognize the openness, the simplicity, the presence of the being that just is. And just to recognize this is precious. We open here to the golden fine frequency, the luminous, the light. Now this light is not like a light of the world, so we might not, to start with, recognize it as light. But at some point, it will reveal itself as light. It's luminous, it's clarity, it's transparency, it's the being knowing itself. It's the being knowing itself, and the knowing of itself is without overlays. So it's an honesty, it's a truth, it's a transparency, right? So we just get to see how the play of words is all part of the resonance of this fine frequency. That the fine frequency is clarity. It's clear, it's true, it's honest. And it's clear and true and honest because it's not being tainted or disturbed by any kind of other patterns. It's just pure. Now we have this purity within us. We are this purity. This is our true nature. So as we open to the stillness, the silence of the being, we're opening to the purity. We're opening to the presence of being, which is pure and untainted. It's peaceful and undisturbed, still and silent, right? Now, as we open, we're following the divine clues that really just say, be still and know that the I am presence is God. Be still and know that I am here. I have not forsaken you, says the glory. I have never left you, says the glory. I am here. Be still and know, says the mother. Right? Be still and know, says the truth. Right? Be still and know that the I am presence of being is the glory. And you may not see that right away because you're looking for conceptual ideas of what the glory is. You're looking for some kind of big experience that's going to give you the mind's idea of salvation. But it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. This is about faith. Faith in the recognition, your recognition of a fine frequency. So it's like in our journey, we have to attune to the fine frequency and be able to recognize it. We're not being saved by something separate from us. Salvation is here when we let go into the fine frequency of being. And it's in our own recognition of that. It's in our own ability, where the being is being itself, where the subtle body and the subtle perception is online, and the silence itself knows itself, is where the magic happens. It's where we open to the wide open field of pure consciousness. We open to this golden landscape, this wild wilderness of our own consciousness. And in the wild wilderness, it's kind of like a desert. It's like a wide open golden desert of consciousness. It's pure, it's sacred, the patterning is holy. While we're in the knowing, we're in this sacred patterning, these kind of flows and geometries that are a sacred order, laws of nature. And yet we come across in this wide open landscape, when we look upon the landscape, we can see discordant patternings if they are there, but we don't see a story. We don't see a narrative. What we see is felt through the nervous system as sensation, right? What we're seeing is a felt sense of a jingle jangle, right? Of a trigger, of a stirring, of some kind of frequency that feels to be slightly discordant or a lot discordant. Because where the true seeing is happening is in the nervous system. It's not a visual seeing, it's a luminous seeing, it's a subtle perception, and it's happening in consciousness. It's happening in the nervous system. So the seeing is not a visual, it's a felt sense. And so the felt sense of the fine frequency of clear seeing is a fine frequency that is very recognizable as joyous, peaceful, open, clear, silent, still, whatever words we want to use. It's very obvious because there's nothing else here but it. It's very obvious because it's simple. There's no explanation, there's no complexity. It's simple, it's free, it's clear, it's celebration. The being just is. There's no narrative about the being. It's just boom. Here, this. Alleluia. Right? So here, the awareness looking upon isn't looking upon like objects. It's not looking, oh, I see something over there. I see something over there. Looking upon is the natural awareness that's just aware, shining as awareness, shining as awareness, shining as awareness. And then, oh, here's a little frequency that feels a little bit like something. What's this? Right? But awareness itself doesn't move, it doesn't change. It stays, it remains exactly the same. Loving presence, light, shining. But in your experience, in our human experience, we feel discordance. The nervous system feels to be jangled or triggered or charged. And that charge can bring with it emotions. It can bring emotions that feel very strong: anger, frustration, hatred, rage, fury, stress, fear, anxiety, terror. Like wild emotional landscape. And it's this wide open landscape of consciousness. And what's happening in this golden desert, this golden, beautiful purity, is that a weather pattern is coming in. It's blasting in. And the wide openness does nothing about the weather pattern. The wide openness is just here. And it allows the weather pattern to come in. And the feelings, the emotions, the sensations, allows it all to come in. It doesn't say, oh, stop doing that. Don't rain so hard. Don't blow so strong. Don't be angry like that. Don't feel that. Why don't you try this? Why don't you just move a little bit over there to the left, like 5 miles, right? The presence of awareness does nothing. The presence of love does nothing. The presence of love just is. It's aware. It's a light. It's seeing. And in a way, this is what we want to allow this naturalness to move in the sense of our human experience, perhaps you can recognize that as the speaking is coming, what it's speaking of is in terms of consciousness. So we're speaking of it as a realm of consciousness, but perhaps you can recognize that we're also simultaneously, multidimensionally speaking of the human experience, right? We're speaking of the same thing, and you can start to fathom, oh yeah, that's what happens in my emotional landscape. That's what happens in my nervous system, because your nervous system is consciousness. Now, the more that we can allow naturally as awareness, the weather pattern to blow in, and we can just be the presence of love. This presence of love is the divine love. This is the presence of divine love that can just be here naturally and allow. We're so used to intercepting. We're so used to trying to fix. We're so used to coming up with a strategy. We're so used to trying to temper and tame the wildness of our true landscape. So what if we can allow the weather patterns to blow through, because we're not moving to the place that says, don't feel like that. You'll lose connection if you feel like that. You won't be seen. You'll lose love. You can't show that. We're not speaking about showing anyone else. We're speaking about being fully present with ourselves in the landscape of our inner functioning. Another layer is the layer that says, oh, but you've got to go visiting with your family. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. The truth is, you don't have to do any of it. You can absolutely be with yourself, cancel your plans, stay home, and let the windstorm blow through, right? The whole idea of I have to is the biggest distraction that the mind has created. Now, when we're living at that frequency, we will keep creating distractions. And what it will look like is, oh, there's family coming. Oh, there's family coming. Oh, I've got to do this. I've got to do that. I've got all this busy stuff happening. Now I've got to take care of this person. I've got to do this. But what's happening is not like misfortune. You're creating that. You're absolutely creating all of the distractions because you're not truly ready in the heart, right? And that's okay. But we're creating our own experience, our own reality out of the frequency we're living at. It can be so easy to express, well, this is just the way my life goes. It's so busy. I have all these things I have to take care of, all of these things. But the truth is you don't. You don't. You think you do. And you're addicted to that idea of busyness. You get addicted to this idea of being needed. It's just such a massive distraction. The truth is, you can put yourself first. You can put your unraveling, the unraveling of your heart first, and you can make it a priority. And if you're living at the frequency of love, you will make this a priority. It's not about attending satsang. It's about it's not about making that a priority, although it's incredibly supportive, but it's not about that. It's about your own inner functioning. It's about what are you putting first? Are you dealing with the patterns that just keep repeating and repeating and repeating? Are you putting that first? Or are you just people pleasing and moving in all of these ways, imagining I've got to take care of my relationship and I might lose it if I don't do this? It's just to sit still for a little while and take a look at all of the have tos and the shoulds and the musts. It's all discordant patterning. It's all conditioning. It's all about where our priorities are. Honestly, where our priorities are where our protections are, right? Speaking of, if our priorities are distractions and people pleasing and taking care of this and that. It's just showing us that we're absolutely deeply protected. We're trying to protect. It can be difficult because the longing of the heart can feel so strong, and we feel like it's all I want, it's all I want. And yet we're moving in this constant protection. We're almost like we can be too afraid to say, you know what, you can come and visit, but for 2 hours every day, 3 hours every day, I'm going to be in a meeting and you're going to have to take care of yourself, go for a walk or go and do things by yourself, right? It's like that we compromise our own integral relationship with our own self, giving power away to the play, to the external, right? There are so many ways that it happens, but the truth is that when the frequency that we're living at is literally saying, with every breath, I sing the glory. With every breath, I'm saying yes to God. With every breath, every breath. Not like, oh, every breath when I'm free for 2 hours in the afternoon when I'm not busy doing other things and taking care of all the things that life I have to take care of. It's like with every breath, I'm saying yes, right? And this is in a way part of the maturing, and the maturing can take in the let's say the time scale of a lifetime, it can take more years than you can imagine, can have spent many lifetimes getting to that point. And it can be that in this lifetime that we won't get to that point of maturing in that way, and it's okay. But we know in the heart when this life has got that aliveness in it, when we recognize there's this fire inside me, and this fire, it will not compromise. It will not compromise. It's like it's choiceless. It's absolutely choiceless. You cannot do anything to temper it in truth. And if you do try to temper it and play out the patterns, it just becomes more and more uncomfortable. Because in a way, the calling of the inner landscape, the calling of your true self, is just getting louder and louder. And it's going to keep creating more and more craziness in the landscape of your seemingly personal life until you stop and listen, until you stop and recognize that your true healing, let's say, the true healing, and the true healing is coming to yourself, right? All imbalance in the worldly, all imbalance in the worldly, disease, illness, stress, suffering, mental illness, any kind of suffering and discordance, it's all rooted in the belief in separation, always. There's nothing else happening. There's nothing else happening. The remedy, the great panacea for all ills is to know yourself, is to open to your true nature, and to know that life will knock on the door. It will knock on the door. it will knock on the door. It will bash down the door. It will bash down the door. It will come streaming in. It will trample on everything. You can put the door back up. You can try to tidy everything up, and it will burst back in again. And it will trample down the walls. It will trample down the house. It will keep trampling down the ideas of the constraints of my life until we take notice, right? This is a force. This is a force. This is a force. This is the force, the power of divinity. And what it's telling us is all of the things that you are concerned with are irrelevant. All of the things you are concerned with are irrelevant if you don't know yourself. If you don't know yourself, everything that you're concerned with is irrelevant. Once you know yourself, you're moving in life in a different way, right? You're using the play of life as the fuel for freedom. And life then is seen as a flow of grace, and it's offering this possibility to keep meeting and meeting the discordance. What we are really pointing to is that there's nothing else ever happening. Nothing else ever happening. The human life, the human experience is a dance of consciousness that is essentially only set up like a school. It's only set up as a realm for the possibility of escaping the bounds of karma, the bounds of cause and effect, and opening to the causeless cause of it all, which is the divine. The only reason for a human life. And we have likely experienced thousands and thousands and thousands. We've likely experienced them together in different configurations. We've likely companioned each other in different ways. And here we are in this configuration, and the story doesn't matter. What matters is that we're here together and the light is shining. And this is where we speak of the extraordinary privilege of a life, the humble privilege of a life where we have the possibility of remembering and living this grace, the possibility of doing this incredibly fine work to see through all of the bounds of seeming limitation and remember the light that we are, and to shine as the light that we are, and to bring the light to the surface of life. That everything that is being sought is inside you. Everything that is being sought, you already are. And in order to really know and live the presence of what you already are, the human life, the human experience is about clearing the obscurations and refining the frequency out of the frequency of fear. And with that, like a captivity of the mind, it's freeing the frequency of fear and limitation into the unlimited, impersonal frequency of the open field of love, the open field of the wide, expansive heart of the infinite, eternal self. This is what this life is for. And the glory is, as these words come, you will feel the fire moving through your nervous system if your life is for this. You will feel enlivened. You will feel the fire moving through your nervous system like an aliveness, like a blazing in your heart, like a longing, like a pull, like a yes, yes, this is what I'm here for. Yes, I know this. Yes, yes, God, could you see? Do you see? I'm here, right? It's like, I'm on board. I'm on board. Yes, yes. Holy yes, yes. It's like, do you recognize? Do you recognize? Are you seeing? It's like a fire. It's like, oh my God, yes, 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 this. It's the heart's call, right? And it doesn't matter if that feels like it's a little bit or it's a lot. Don't let the mind come in and judge. But if you're here, you have this. You wouldn't be here if you didn't have this in some way. And it's recognizing this is the privilege, this is the glory, that you're at a point in the evolution of consciousness, not as a divided human, but you're at a point in the evolution of consciousness where this is possible. And this is why it's so extraordinary to recognize that what is happening and what is being invited is so much more than the seeming mundane details that we can get trapped in. We can be living this fire, living this truth, right in the center of life. In a way, life doesn't change, and yet everything changes. Life doesn't change. Certain characters stay the same, but our way of relating, our way of using everything as fertile ground for our own flourishing. And when I say our own flourishing, I don't mean a separate me's flourishing. I mean the unique flourishing. It's like the fertile ground for the true flowering of the unique divine display that you are to be, the unique divine expression that you are to be on the surface of life, the unique song that you are here to sing, the unique dharma, the unique way that you are to bring the light to the surface of life, the unique way that you are to sing your song, dance your dance, right? Absolutely one with the divine. And of course, in order for the fullness of this flowering, it requires that we compost all of those discordant patterns into being the fertile ground so that we can use the richness of what seems to have been the darkness. We can use the richness, and usually, the richness of what we move through will often be the learning ground that will equip us for our true Dharma in certain ways. That whatever we have to move through and the particular flavors that feel really tangy and hard, really gritty, will usually be equipping us in some way, that we're going to be able to use this wisdom that we're opening to, and the way that we've lived through and transmuted and what we've had to face. Usually it will be that it will be equipping us, that it will come back at some point and be part often of the Dharma in some way, that it will be seen, let's say, that what we moved through that felt so hard and dismantling brutal, even at times, dare I say, will actually be like the rooted ground from which we can speak of and share the truth of what this is all about. It allows us to develop compassion. It dismantles the patterns, and it brings a certain rootedness, like an initiation, right? It's like a divine initiation that we're moved through, that at some point we usually recognize, once the discordant patterning has regained its divine pattern as like the mandala, the map of the unique flowering, we will usually see, oh, if I hadn't lived through that, I wouldn't be able to move like this. We always see the grace, and it never looks like what we think it's going to look like. It never looks the way, because the wisdom is so fine-tuned, right? So this is what we're up to, the quest. Quite simply, the quest is about coming to the stillness, to the silence, coming to the presence of being, and recognizing that there's always a still, silent presence here. And the more that we recognize this still, silent presence, we're opening to the fine, subtle frequency. We're bringing online the recognition, the subtle perception of the being knowing itself. We're bringing online the subtle body. So we recognize we don't know the being with the mind. The mind is a denser frequency of consciousness. The body is a denser frequency of consciousness, the physicality. We don't know it with the body. We don't know it with the mind. We know it with the subtle body, the felt sense. And so developing the felt sense of the subtle body, the frequency, being able to resonate and recognize the subtle frequencies, and being able to feel the different frequencies of discordance, of purity, of peace, of joy, being able to recognize the subtle frequencies allows us to be more of a fine-tuned antenna and transmitter of these frequencies, right? We are antenna to receive the light, and we're transmitters to offer a transmission of the light. Now we are antennas to receive the light frequencies, the resonant light frequencies, the divine frequencies. We're antennas to receive it, and we get more and more fine-tuned in the nervous system to be able to receive. So this is where our great sensitivity is a bonus, and our great sensitivity can also mean that feeling that stresses can also feel extra hard, right? It's like the more that we feel, the more that we feel. The more that we feel the love, the more we feel the pain. The more we feel the joy, the more we feel the upset. It's like the more sensitive we are, the more deeply we feel everything. And the glory is that we come to a settling out where we realize, as frequency, it doesn't really matter what label we give to it. It's like where we could speak of the ecstatic and the agony, like the frequency is almost the same. The agony and the ecstasy is almost the same. It's like sometimes the ecstatic can feel almost unbearable, that you don't know, is this ecstatic? Is this rapture? Is this like this sense of explosion? It's like, is this, where can I place this, right? If you want to come into that placing, is this good? Is this bad? It's like, whoa, we're opening to frequencies that we can't really measure in the same way. We can also open to frequencies of such intense like fury as we open through these realms. And I'll speak of this because some of us have and some of us will, that we open to such fury that you feel like you could kill and yet you're sort of laughing at the same time because you're giddy, because you don't really know. It's like you're just experiencing these frequencies and you can't measure it. You can't measure because the frequency measures are so much finer and more extensive, infinitely extensive than our measure of pleasure and pain, right? Happiness and misery within the human experience. We're opening to these dimensions of frequencies and experiencing the landscape. And so it means that we experience then the emotional landscape. On a certain level, we can know, well, that's anger. And yet, like it just can feel like total craziness. And yet when we know this and we're able to be with it, we don't enter fear of it. We're able to be with it, recognizing, oh, this is a weather pattern. This is a moving of energy. This is a releasing, and releasing is good. Releasing is good. And we find ways of being able to allow sound, movement, expression, to allow whatever wants to move through. So as we're refining and refining, there's so much that can happen in this landscape of consciousness. And within our human experience, our nervous system is where we're experiencing it. Our nervous system is the consciousness. And the nervous system includes, within our sense of the physicality, it includes the nervous system, which is so extensive. It's in everything, right? It's in the brain, it's in the digestive system. It's hugely in the digestive system. That's why digestive health is kind of the start of keeping ourselves balanced, right? Why we speak, what gets spoken in the Ayurveda about sattvic living and taking care of the digestive system. It's because the nervous system is the digestive system. So refining the consciousness is refining the nervous system. It's in the whole of our functioning and our glands and our brain. And that's why we're, let's say, having a lot of sattva, like luminous, clean, clear, balance, harmony, means that the life multidimensionally will be a reflection of this. If we're very scattered because of what we're eating, we're very scattered, and our digestive system will reflect it, but also within our consciousness, we'll find it much harder to regulate the nervous system, right? And if we can't regulate the nervous system, we're going to find it much more stressful to navigate the intense emotions and clearing that happens as we deepen in this process. So this is why it's important to have balance all the way through, because the nervous system is refining as much as it can, and it will never bring on more than we can handle. So the more our nervous system is fine-tuned, refined, let's say, the more of an antenna we are for the light, the more the light can get in and it can penetrate everything and refine everything. Has the possibility of refining and rejuvenating the physicality, has the possibility, of course, of refining and clearing the emotional body, has the possibility of refining and clearing, of course, the nervous system and rebalancing the nervous system, and really bringing online the bliss body, the bliss of being, the knowing of bliss. And as we speak of the knowing of bliss and having the bliss body online means that we have the nectar, the nectarine bliss flowing. And the nectar is deeply nourishing and refining everything. Now, the nectar is or can also be called soma. And soma, we can be making soma at every level of the life. We can be making soma multidimensionally. So in a way, everything that we move in life has the possibility of burdening us with toxins or making soma. What brings us joy, right? As I think Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss, right? It will open these doors and windows or whatever that you would never known were there. But as we follow the bliss, we're making soma. If you follow what brings you alive rather than what your mind tells you that you have to do, you're making soma. You're drinking bliss. When you move in a practice like a yoga or a qigong or something practice, and you feel that enlivening of the chi, of the prana, you're making soma. When you walk in nature and you just feel so alive in the frequency, you're making soma. You go to a gathering and you feel really heavy and dense, you're creating and gathering ama, toxins in your system, right? Now your system has got to deal with the toxins, right? You eat food that is very easy for your digestive system to assimilate. You're not making toxins. You're not burdening your system. It moves through very easily, and then you're creating soma. You're being nourished at the deepest level by warm, simple, nourishing sattvic food, right? On every level of the life, we have the possibility of making soma, right? In a relationship that feels really joyous and nourishing, you're making soma. In a relationship that feels toxic, abusive, stressful, hard, you're building up ama. You're building up toxins, right? So just to receive the simplicity, it's kind of obvious, right? The more soma that we are drinking, the more bliss that we're drinking, by resonating at that frequency of alignment, of attunement, the more the nervous system is being refined, and the more light we can receive, the more that light can really get into all of the different areas and can dispel the darknesses and the clear the toxins and the stresses. In a way, you know, the process of clearing the stress that we go through in the human experience is just a huge purification. It's a huge detox of the burdensome narrative of the life, right? And what creates that detox is, as we open to the being, as we're drinking the soma, as we're drinking in the nectar of the knowing of the heart, we're taking in the light. The light is purifying and purging out the deep, dark, stuck places so that we can be freed, right? So that we're not entrenched. So when it seems like in this process, why is all this hard stuff coming forward? It's coming forward because it's like a deep detox that's kind of clearing the toxins and the calcifications, and it's really purifying everything at the deepest level. And of course we have to be purified at the emotional level, because our emotional reactions and stories and narratives and conditionings and protections are such a huge area where we can remain bound. And that's why life offers the circumstances, relationships, and situations to allow the clearing of that. We all have different configurations of toxic buildup, let's say, that is being purified. Now, the great glorious truth is that right here now, the presence of being is here. The glory is here. The divine wholeness is here. And you already are that. You are the wholeness. What stops you resonating and living that is this toxic buildup, in a way, in these layers and the identification with the layers. And within those layers can be addictions, addictions to the suffering, addictions to toxic substances. And we're speaking there of things like, you know, overloads of caffeine and sugar. We're not talking about heroin and marijuana. We're talking about we're talking about all of the ways. And it's not to create then judgment, but it's just this way of bringing a big light that goes, wow, okay, I see how this all functions. And it's not to try to then create a cleanup project that starts like now, not allow this, not allow that, because that doesn't work either, right? We know those projects don't work. They work for a short time. It's more about illuminating and letting the addictive patterns and habits fall away naturally, just because you're so nourished by soma. You're so nourished. You're resonating at such a fine frequency that you recognize, and that we can then, let's say, we can use sweetness and caffeine as a medicine, but we're not addicted to it anymore. It's never about not allowed, never about not allowed. It doesn't exist. It's about a little bit, and being able to attune to the frequency. Like, does this really feel good in the body? Is this like an addiction? Is this a habit? Is this a distraction? Does this feel really enlivening? Do I feel good? It's this ability to be the light. It's like nothing in life needs to be a mystery when you are the light, when you are the wisdom, that you can illuminate, and you can deny it. And we have an amazing capacity for denial in our human experience, amazing capacity for denial. And we can deny it and deny it and deny it. But at some point, when we're ready, we'll say, yeah, that isn't actually working. I can keep telling myself that that's okay, and I like it, and that's like a cozy thing that I like to do. Like, I get together with my friend and we have a coffee and we eat cake. I can keep telling myself that's a good thing, but the truth is, actually, I feel crap afterwards, right? And I keep doing it because I've got some kind of mental idea that this is good, this is a treat, this is a treat, this is nourishing. And then there's the recognition, actually, it's not a treat. It's not a treat. It's not a treat at all. That's just a concept. What is a treat is drinking in soma, is drinking in the light. What is a treat is to go through a whole day feeling unburdened, illuminated, and ecstatic, reveling in the bliss of being, right? So the glory is that we have absolute responsibility for our own unfolding. There's no one judging, there's no one marking your book, there's no right or wrong, there's no shoulds and shouldn'ts. It's all totally open. Everything is God. Everything is God. Everything is God. It's where are we living from, and how are we receiving nourishment, right? It's easy to use food as an example, but food is just one little area, but it is also an area that can have our deepest entrenched patterns. So it's not about what we eat, and it's not about moving, creating eating patterns even from fear and shoulds. That's not going to work either. It's about living at the fine frequency and being able to discern. Sometimes, you know, what you really need is the greatest medicine. I can remember one of the guides in this unfolding who seemed to be like such a resonating divine being, you know, that kind of lived on kitchery and seemed, you know, to be absolutely a being that if anyone was living in perfection, shared with me, well, sometimes I just have to eat a whole bag of chips because I need the salt and the fat, right? And that was like such a great revelation, because that's where the soma was, right? That the knowing is, this is where the soma is, right? So all of this to say that we have this incredible capacity as the frequency refines to live a glorious life, to live a kind of miraculous life, to live at the frequency of love, to live as the wide open heart, to be nourished by the soma of the fine frequency of resonating as love. Just to notice right now, what is happening? Can you feel that resonant frequency of being? Can you feel the nervous system resonating? Are you aware of the light? The lightness, the transparency, the truth. A certain resonant knowing of the being, and knowing this is who you are. This right here doesn't need any explanation. It's just so clear. And then, of course, from here, if there feels to be discordance, just to look upon, just to be the light that's naturally shining, and allow the sensations of discordance to be felt in the nervous system, allowing it all. It's like truly being the mirror for the young parts of yourself, being the divine love, being the love, and mirroring that love so that the young part of you that can be held in protection and conditioning can be mirrored and can open to the deepest remembrance, right? That deep in the seemingly darkest hiding places is the remembering of love, is the remembering of the light, of the innocence. And as we open through the layers, it's like the shining of the innocence restores us to the original frequency. We're brought back to the original source frequency. And life is lived in naturalness as love, love that just loves. So just resting here, drinking in the nectar, drinking in the soma, letting the nervous system be restored, regenerated, recalibrated, refined. So thank you. Thank you for being here. This speaking that